And so I think most people logic dictates that if you have a problem, you need to identify it, and then you need to have a game plan to work through it. That's just common sense. Unfortunately, the majority of people do not have a process. They don't necessarily identify their problems, and they're not willing to talk about it.
Hey everybody, Chris G here, another episode of Hard Hat to CEO. In today's episode, we're going to talk about, when you're going to get out of that hard hat and become the CEO, sometimes you run into roadblocks, those little things that slow you down. And I've got a gentleman here, Jerry. Jerry's going to talk about some black dots. And what that means is when you get knocked down, you get back up and get those goals made. So please help me welcome Jerry Fish. Jerry, good to have you here today.
Hi, Chris. Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. I love what you're doing with your podcast, your format. It's fantastic. So
thank you.
Delighted to be here.
Well, Jerry, can you give us a little background about yourself? That way we can let everybody know what we're getting into.
You bet. I'll try and keep it reasonably short. Real simple. I grew up in Southern California. I started in the financial services industry with a company called Prudential. You may have heard of them. Back in, I hate to say this because it really ages me, 1981, at the ripe age of 23. And I was there for several years. I was a leading producer and manager. And ultimately in 93, I transitioned to New York Life, which is a Fortune 100 insurance and financial services company in San Francisco. Is where I started with them. They're out of New York. And I was brought in to a leadership role from the day I started. And I was what they call a partner, and ultimately got promoted and was a managing partner, which basically meant I was responsible for a large organization in a particular territory. And I managed 4 offices in my career, and then ultimately became a vice president, a regional vice president, before I retired.
And then since then, you've kind of come up with a philosophy of some sort, the black dot. Is that right?
The black dot philosophy, correct.
And what's that? How's that going to, lead into our meat of our conversation today?
Well, I'll give you some background. So in 1993, when I started with New York Life, just prior to that, my personal life and my professional life were upside down. So I had a lot of success at Prudential. And in 1990, my sister passed away unexpectedly. That was my real first black dot. And a black dot's a metaphor for challenges or goals, mostly obstacles that you have to overcome to move forward. And so my sister had passed away. I had a business relationship that went south because of a dishonest partner. I had to file bankruptcy. My marriage was on shaky ground, ultimately led to a divorce and a big custody fight. And my cousin, who was like a sister at that time, was diagnosed with a terminal illness. And so my world was rocked big time.
All the same year?
All within a couple of years of each other. It was the time period between 1990 and 1993.
Wow.
So there was a lot going on in my life. But I had this opportunity to go back into a leadership role because I had left leadership to go into personal production, where I started a company with my former partner, who was the one that turned out to be dishonest, and I ended that relationship. But at the end of the day, I went back into a leadership role happily, but it was at a time that was very challenging for me. So even though I had a lot of success in the past and I had this opportunity, it was difficult just getting out of bed. I was very depressed. I was feeling a lot of anxiety, and it was a very difficult time. So after about 6 months, the managing partner of that office, that was in San Francisco, his name was Mike Croplin. He said, "Look, we're going to go to lunch today. We got to talk about what's happening with your career. So we went to his, he belonged to a club. We went there for lunch, and he grabbed a napkin from a waiter. And it was very random. It was arbitrary. I knew I was going to get schooled, if you will, during this lunch, and it wasn't talk about all the success I was having at that time. And he took that napkin and he drew 3 circles. And each circle represented my greatest challenge as it related to what I needed to overcome in order to have success. And actually, at that time, to keep my job. It was a very humbling lunch. And he wrote down 3 specific obstacles that were getting in the way of my being able to make progress. And ultimately, my goal was to be promoted to managing partner and get my own office. So he wrote down these 3 challenges that I was having, and we then followed that up with weekly meetings, and we developed some strategies and tactics. And then during these weekly meetings, he held me accountable. So it was a game plan, if you will. But the 3 circles drew my attention. And maybe because I'm a visual person, but the idea that I could attach a challenge to this object, which was a circle, intrigued me. And while doodling, I just changed the circles to black dots. And so I identified all my challenges, both personally and professionally, with these black dots. And of course, the bigger the black dot, the bigger the problem. These 3 were huge, because if I didn't get my arms around these particular issues, never mind getting promoted and running my own office, I was not going to have a job.
Sure.
So over the next 6 months, I was able to meet all the objectives that he laid out for me at that lunch. And 3 years later, I was promoted to my first office. I continued to develop this idea, right, that black dots represent challenges. And I used it with the advisors that were on my team or in my office. I used it for recruiting. I used it with my leadership team. And I developed the black dot philosophy over a period of really 25 years. And it gradually became bigger and bigger. And I implemented and executed that philosophy in the 4 offices that I managed, and use it with my personal life as well.
Now, a lot of my listeners are construction owners.
Right.
And if they have a small leadership team, how could they use that black dot philosophy today for them to get them where they want to be, like a CEO of their company?
Right. So there's a book that was written many years ago, and I'd love to take responsibility for it, but I can't. It's called Fish. Mm-hmm. And it's are you familiar with it?
I've heard of it, yes.
Okay.
I've never read it, but I do know it.
Okay, it's called the Fish philosophy. And that's not why I had to come up with the black dot philosophy, because Fish was taken, it being my last name. So I can't take credit for it. But in this book, it's about Pikes Peak Fish Market in Seattle. These guys are fishmongers, and it's hard work, as you probably know, right? Mm-hmm. You're working, ridiculous hours, long hours,
wet,
cold, wind. Oh yeah, brutal. These guys all got together and decided that if they were going to do this, they were going to be the best, and that this fish market would be the most highly respected fish market and well thought of fish market in the world, right? Mm-hmm. So one day these fishmongers are living their life with the normal challenges that you would have with that kind of occupation, plus, of course, their personal stuff. And they made a decision that was life-changing for all of them and their customers. They decided that they were going to be the #1 fish market in the world. So they came up with, and it goes much deeper than this, but they came up with 4 ideas, if you will, that was going to help them transition from where they were to being this #1 fish market. And these ideas, this philosophy, was around choose your attitude, okay? Play, meaning have fun.
Yep.
Work can be fun if you do it right. Make their day, meaning their customers, and be present. So, for example, if a customer came into the fish market and they're trying to explain to the fishmonger exactly what they were looking for, etc. You know, have you ever been in a conversation where somebody's looking at you, but you know they're not listening?
Oh yeah,
Right?
I've seen them. I've actually observed other people talking to other people, and we just like go. They just like water off a duck's back. It went over and went on, and that guy never even.
Right.
They never heard him at all. Heard that person.
Well,
Yeah.
how does it feel to be on the receiving end of that? Because it's not something that people can hide, right? If I'm talking to you and I'm trying to explain to you something that's important to me, and you're looking at me, but I know you're not listening, that you're somewhere else. How am I feeling? Not good. Do I want to go back and talk to you again? Probably not. So that's what be present was, is really, listen to what they're saying. And so when you respond to what they're saying, meaning the customer, it's because you listen to them and you're not just, talking for the sake of talking, that you're having a meaningful conversation. Long story short, these fishmongers, this particular fish market became world famous. It didn't take long before people started to recognize what was going on. They got a lot of press. A company was started called the Fish Philosophy. It's a human resources company that goes into these corporations throughout the country and helps them adopt a philosophy that would work for them and their employees. So to answer your question, to use the acronym KISS, keep it simple, stupid, for that, I'm a big believer in that. If you listen to a podcast or you're reading a book or an article, sometimes it goes way too deep and it goes beyond what most people can comprehend. It gets too technical, and we do become overwhelmed at times with information, and sometimes complex information that's hard to process and use in our daily lives. Certainly a CEO of a construction company may find that challenging. So I'm a believer of keeping everything as simple as possible so that it makes sense and it can be implemented and executed, whatever it is they're trying to do. So for a CEO to implement the black dot philosophy, it's really very simple. Okay, this is about identifying issues that you have as a CEO, number one, right? So at any given day, if you were the CEO of a construction company and I sat down with you and I said, Chris, what are your greatest challenges? Would you have a few?
Oh, I imagine more than a few, probably, if you get down to it. Absolutely.
It doesn't matter who you are, how big your company is, how much revenue, everybody has challenges.
Absolutely.
And it's obviously in their personal and professional life. So if I sat down with you and I asked those questions, Chris, tell me about what's going on in your world. What are some of the biggest issues, challenges that you're faced with? As you start to describe those challenges, I'm mapping them, meaning that I'm assigning a black dot based on the severity or the significance of that challenge. Okay. Once you identify your challenges, obviously you prioritize by working on the big black dots first. Okay. So what the black dot philosophy does, it takes these challenges that somebody has, whether it's personal or professional. Using this example as a CEO of a construction company, I would then take them through this process of developing a game plan to help either resolve or eliminate the challenges they're having. And we do that by creating strategies and tactics. Okay, a strategy, as an example, if somebody said that, listen, in a year from now, I want to be in the best shape of my life. Physically, right? Well, that's a great goal. Now, if you left it there, it would be hard to really manage, wouldn't it? Because
it's not strategy for sure. No, but It's a good
just
goal.
words, right?
Yeah.
So you have to have a game plan. If your goal is to be in the best shape of your life, you obviously have to have a game plan. One strategy might be to lose weight. Okay,
Yep.
and there's usually several strategies assigned to a challenge. Underneath that lose weight would be the tactics. So, for example, losing weight might mean that number one, you got to change your diet. Number two, you need to implement an exercise program. And so you go down this list of tactics, and then within the tactics, you got to create a game plan within the tactics, meaning you got to get very specific, and then you have to be able to track, and then there has to be accountability. Okay, and so that's really what it is. Again, going back to that acronym KISS, is keeping it simple. If you have a significant challenge in your business and you've asked me to help you work through it, that's the process I'm going to use. Now, it goes deeper and it's more significant than what I'm explaining, but the basis for it and the structure of the Black Dot philosophy process is just like what I explained. It's just identifying the problem and then working through it using a proven system that will allow you within a certain time frame to either diminish, resolve, or eliminate whatever challenges you're having.
When you're evaluating the black dots and I guess the severity or the bigness of them, if that's a word, why wouldn't you look at, I guess those because they're most impactful, because they're the biggest ones. Sometimes, you look at little ones, I can knock those out easier than I can the big one. But the little ones probably aren't really, they're nuisances, but they're not really stopping you from getting to your goal. Would that be an accurate assumption?
Absolutely. And here's the thing about, the severity or the significance or size of black dots. The smaller ones, you still have to have a game plan. In other words, how do you deal with the everyday black dots that surface? Some people ignore them. Now, what does that do to you internally?
That probably wears on me a little bit in the background. It probably just eats at you a little bit, knowing that they're there.
Yeah, and over time, these small black dots can add up.
Grow, I guess. Right? Grow to a big dot, right?
They can. Yeah. They can. They can start small, get big. But you still have to have a way of deflecting them, whether it's to logistics, like to assign somebody to deal with that issue, an employee. Maybe it's an accounting problem, so obviously you have a CPA. So there's little things that are going to come up all the time, and you just have to get resilient and have a plan to deflect those so that they don't become overwhelming or, like you said, larger over time. Okay?
Yep.
That's the importance of those. Really what you want to be doing is you want to acknowledge what it is. And, I think men more than women have a bigger issue in sharing or articulating the challenges they may have, because we tend to, put on that happy face, right?
Were you talking to my wife, Kathy, here lately?
I think so. Yeah.
She probably said, okay, maybe that might, yeah.
Right. When somebody says, how you doing? And you say, I'm fine. And you're not.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. There's a lot of that goes on. I think, especially with men. I'm just from my 67 years on this planet. That's my experience.
Sure.
Because I'm one of them, and I've had issues being able to share what I'm feeling with others. Right. But once you let the guard down and you open up and you acknowledge what it is that's bothering you, and the significance of it, meaning the size of the black dot, then you can come up with a game plan. It's hard to come up with a game plan if you're ignoring it or you're not acknowledging the challenges or issues you're having both in your personal and professional life.
That's true. Is it kind of like you got to, Alcoholics Anonymous or all that good stuff, where you have to acknowledge you have a problem or you need to deal with it, and then once you get past that, then you can look at it objectively maybe and try to figure out a good solution to solve it.
Well, I'll give you an example.
Okay.
My mother passed away when I was 17.
Mm-hmm.
And that was truly my first big black dot, right? It was unexpected. Obviously, she was only 40 when she was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And I thought I handled it rather well, meaning, I didn't crumble at the time. It was a very devastating experience, obviously. And then my sister, and then other things in my life obviously didn't turn out the way I expected. And
Sure.
I felt I was very resilient, meaning that, okay, I'll just deal with it. Thick skin.
Yep.
That works for a short period of time. It's not a good long-term strategy, because what happens is when you don't process the challenges that you have or events in your life that are significant and you let it roll off your back, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
it builds internally. And one day, which I experienced, you're going to get bad news or something significant's going to happen, and that ability to be resilient or have thick skin is gone because it's just too much to bear. That's when people kind of lose it,
Mm-hmm.
they can lose it physically, mentally, in terms of how they deal with the situation. For me, I was that guy that let things roll off his back. I dealt with a lot of black dots over my younger life. But when my sister passed away and my cousin was diagnosed and my marriage was going south and I had a bankruptcy, it was too much to bear. And so I could not be that thick-skinned, resilient guy that I had been.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I went into a deep depression and had the anxiety, significant anxiety at that time, because it hit me like it's like running into a brick wall.
Sure. Now, we talked about being a team leader, and actually your boss, the one that took you to lunch, how do you deal with others' black dots, people on your team?
Right. Well, that's a great question, and it's an important one. So when I was a managing partner and I was growing organizations within the framework of the company that I worked for, and it was New York Life, they're a Fortune 100 insurance and financial services company. The one thing you want to stay away from is having conversations with your employees about their personal problems.
Okay.
That's not a good place to be. You want to be sensitive to what's going on in their personal life. You want to be open to at least listening. You don't want to shut people down at a time when they're vulnerable, right? Somebody walks into your office and they say, hey, I have this problem at home, right? You don't just say, hey, that's your personal business. Turn around and leave my office, right?
Right.
But at the same time, you don't want to become somebody's therapist. And once you get involved in somebody's personal life, then it becomes problematic, because then that employee, if they're having marital problems, goes home and says, hey, my boss, Chris, said this. He agreed, right? Those are things that could create big problems for you as a CEO.
Sure.
That said, what I did is I used the black dot philosophy to help my employees be better employees. I used it to help, in my business, the salespeople be better salespeople, and the leaders, the managers, be better at what they were doing. And I could use the black dot philosophy for that. What I did do, though, is I taught them how to use it in their personal lives, because it's not that much different.
No.
And they can work through some of the issues they're having personally that are affecting their work because they're distracted. And that became an important piece, because when I would coach, I've spent over 6,000 hours coaching people in my business life prior to retiring. That was part of my job description, was to plan, review, engage their performance, and then provide suggestions or recommendations that they could implement and execute to get better at what they were doing. So I would teach them how to use the black dot philosophy at home, and the feedback I got over time was, hey, without that, I'm not sure I would have been able to resolve this issue. Or it helped me get through a very difficult period in my life. because you want happy people. You want people that are content with their personal lives because they're better employees, right?
Absolutely.
And
Then you want to
so-
help them with their professional life. In theory, helps them with their personal life too. But if
no
it's
question.
back and forth. Now, you said this, not me, but you've been around a while. You know,
Yes, I have.
and you've reinvented yourself several times. What advice would you give somebody that might be quietly struggling and look for success somehow? Any advice for those guys?
So you're speaking about somebody who's going through a difficult time. Or
Whether it
is-
be personally or even you mentioned like they need to sit down and do their black dots, right? They need
yeah,
to figure out what the big ones.
yeah.
From the
That's
outside, people, you mentioned you're fine. Well, maybe I'm not really fine. I'm struggling inside and I know it. I have to realize it, recognize it, right? Admit to it, maybe not to everybody, just personally. It's like, I have a problem, and sit down and make a list of those black dots.
100%. And people are in denial when it comes to
Right.
some personal struggles, right? Or they avoid it because it's too stressful. My advice would be, look, if you're ignoring or you're deflecting or you're not dealing in reality with your current situation, whether it be in your professional life or your personal life, the problems are going to be exasperated. They're going to get bigger. It's going to cause significant physical and mental problems, right? High blood pressure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's genetic, but high blood pressure could be caused because somebody's holding in what's bothering them. They're not willing to open up and talk, let's say, to a therapist, okay, or a mentor, and it gets bottled up. So my advice is, look, you're not benefiting yourself and others by trying to be stoic or
Sure.
trying to be thick-skinned. You're better off dealing with reality, which are your black dots, and moving on. There's a sense of gratification that you get when you take on a certain struggle or challenge or issue in your personal professional life and you work through it and you either reach your goal or you eliminate a challenge. But ignoring it, holding it in, not articulating what you're thinking or feeling, there's no good ending there. That story is not going to have a happy ending. And so I think most people, logic dictates that if you have a problem, you need to identify it, and then you need to have a game plan to work through it. That's just common sense. Unfortunately, the majority of people do not have a process. They don't necessarily identify their problems, and they're not willing to talk about it.
As you listen to this episode and you think this is something like what you're struggling with, I want you to make your black dots this week. Best part is I want you to take those smaller black dots and delegate them to somebody else. Let you focus on the big ones, right?
Yeah, if you have too many emails that you haven't responded to, that's something that you can write a check to make it go away, meaning you pay an employee to do that.
Absolutely.
If you're overwhelmed with a particular project and you're taking on too much responsibility, you're not delegating and getting help with it, you're not helping yourself, your company, or your employees by doing that. So, when you can or where you can, even in big black dots, you can enroll people in the idea of helping you. If it's a business challenge, obviously it's going to involve other people.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jerry. And Jerry's contact information is going to be in the show notes below. Jerry, I understand in my notes here, you've got a new book coming out. Is that right?
I do. Well,
tell us a little about it before we go. Huh?
Boy, that went fast.
I know. I mean, I'm looking at it, it's like, Yep.
Wow,
We're getting
there's
there.
so much.
I need a wrap up time.
There's
You
so
told
much
me.
more. There's so
Sure.
much more. But anyway, I am in the process of writing kind of a sequel. It's called Unstuck, and it's what we've been talking about. And it goes deeper than my first book, theblackphilosophy.com. By the way, if people are interested in more information, either the coaching or the speaking that I offer, the book can be bought at Amazon. But my website is www.theblack.philosophy.com. If you forget that, you Google the black dot philosophy, you got to put philosophy in there. My website will come up, my social media pages, the book. Unstuck, I'm hoping that I finish it and it gets published and is out in the fall.
Awesome. Also, Black Dot Philosophy will be in the show notes below. And if you want to talk about mentoring or something about your business or how to actually save some time, that's what we focus on first here at Hard Hat CEO. Follow me and hit the link in the show notes. Set up a time with me. Jerry, we appreciate your time today. It's been a pleasure and some good information for sure.
Well, thank you, Chris. If you want to continue the conversation, invite me back. We'll get through some of the material that we didn't get to cover today because I think it will absolutely impact your listeners in a very positive way.
We can make that happen.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and to speak to your listeners, your audience, and I appreciate meeting you, and I wish you all the best with your podcast.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys. We'll see you again next week. Hard Hat CEO. Bye-bye.
Take care.